Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session on the HCPC English language requirements and OET and everything you need to know. We're delighted to be here today and to be joined by Tom Miller, Policy Manager at HCPC. So in today's session, we're going to start with Tom giving an introduction and an overview of the English language consultation that occurred last year at HCPC. And then in the second part of the session, I'll be going through OET, what the test is, and give you an overview of the test and some information on how you can book your test and share your result with HCPC. But for now, I'm delighted to hand over to Tom from HCPC. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Nadia, and hello to everybody that's watching. It's a pleasure to join you this morning, and yeah, really glad to be here. I have some slides that are going to be coming up shortly, I think. Yep, there we go. So that is the best picture of myself that I've got, which is a wedding one, so sorry about that. But yeah, my name is Tom Miller. I'm a policy manager here at HCPC, and I've been here just over 2 years now. And I'll give you a little bit of background about our organisation, a little bit about what our requirements are for people signing up as registrants through our international route, and a little bit about the changes that we've made in English language in the context and where OET fits into that. So let's get on to the first slide. So yeah, HCPC, we are the Health and Care Professions Council, and we regulate 15 professions, and there's a really wide range of them. It ranges all the way from practitioner psychologists through to paramedics, physiotherapists. All of the kind of allied health professions really fall under our umbrella. And so how do we regulate people? Well, we hold a professional register, just like our colleagues at the General Medical Council and Nursing and Midwifery Council. We set standards for both professionals and the organisations that educate professionals, and we expect those to be met. And we take regulatory action when things go wrong in meeting those standards. And so that can mean things like fitness to practice. It can mean that we just make a direct intervention. And so there are a range of things that we do basically where our standards are not kept. We have 15 protected titles to go with our 15 professions. And to use those titles, you have to be registered with us by law. And we will only register people that we can show meet our standards so that they can practice safely and effectively. And that means we have to do some checking before we allow people onto our register. We check the quality of our training courses. So that when someone completes one which meets our standards, we can get you onto the register. But that only really applies inside the UK. So there's a range of other work that has to take place outside the UK. So if someone's trained outside the UK, we also have to make sure that you meet our standards before we can allow you to join the professional register that we hold. So there's a short video here, and hopefully we can get that to play, and this gives a general idea and overview of our role.
We are the Health and Care Professions Council, or HCPC for short. We are a multi-professional health and care regulator. We are here to protect the public and uphold confidence in the professions we regulate. Our main aims are to ensure that health and care professionals are properly trained, keep their knowledge and skills up to date throughout their career, and meet our standards for their conduct and professional practice. The HCPC will take action when professionals fail to meet our standards, and if we believe the public is being misled into thinking someone is a registered professional when they are not. How do we protect the public? We set standards. We work with service providers, employers, registrants, and their professional bodies to keep the standards we expect our professionals to meet relevant and up to date. These standards cover conduct, performance, and ethics. This is the ethical framework within which all our registrants must work. Effectively, the behavior the public should expect of professionals on our register. Proficiency. These cover the knowledge, skills, and abilities we believe are the minimum standards necessary for safe and effective practice. Continual development. These set out what professionals need to do to keep their skills and knowledge up to date in order to practice safely and effectively. Education and training provision. This sets out how we assess whether education providers will deliver practice-ready graduates. We keep a public register of professionals who meet our standards. This means you can check the details of the health and care professional you are seeing to ensure they are appropriately qualified and meet our standards. We ensure education programs deliver practice-ready graduates. We assess and approve education and training programs which students and learners need to complete before they are eligible to apply for registration with us. These programs need to ensure students are fit to practice on their first day at work as a registered professional. We take action if a concern is raised about a professional. Most professionals on our register practice safely and meet our standards. On the rare occasions that something goes wrong, anyone can raise a concern with us. If we find that an individual has not met our standards, we may take action, such as telling a professional to practice in a certain way, or to carry out further training. In the most serious cases, we can stop a professional from practicing. We assess continuing professional development. The health and care landscape is continually changing due to developments in treatment, practice, and changes in society. To stay registered, professionals need to keep up to date with developments and must be able to meet our standards for continuing professional development. Our professionals declare they are doing so when they renew their registration. We also audit the CPD records of each profession to check the standards are met. If you would like further information about us, simply visit our website, hcpc-uk.org.
So that gives a really broad overview of what we're about, why we exist, and the role that we hold within the health and care system in the UK. And these are our 15 professions. They're also the protected titles. And so, as you can see, there's a really wide range of them. And some of those have eligibility for OET to be used as the English language evidence for you to join the register. And we'll come on to that a little bit later in this presentation. For now, let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about international registration and how it works at HCPC. So applicants that trained within the UK use the UK route, and those who are trained and qualified outside the UK use the international route. It's important to think about what this means because it may well be that you're resident in the UK, but because you've trained internationally, you still need to use our international route to apply to join our register. Your training and qualification has got to be relevant to one of the professions that we regulate, and we do ask for evidence about that. There's a range of verification that we do when you go through your international registration process. Well, we will match up your training and qualification to the profession and make sure that your qualification is appropriate. And you can't have been registered with HCPC previously, and this is probably quite a small number of people that this will affect. But if you've previously been registered with us, you always use our UK registration route, which means that you only have our UK requirements, and English language is not one of those. So that's just an important thing for us to point out there. We'll move to the next slide. So these are the steps that applicants go through to become registrants, i.e. to join our register. And so this is work basically that is carried out as part of your registration. So first we ask you to check your eligibility. I've just talked a little bit about that there. There's a slightly different process for people whose qualifications are from the EEA or EFTA countries or from Switzerland, in the sense that you need to do a paper application, but it's kind of a very similar process that you go through to our regular international registration route. Then there's a phase where we ask you to prepare the appropriate documents, and so we want proof of ID and address from you. We want information about your course and your professional qualification that allows us to evidence that that is real and that it's appropriate. we ask you for a certificate of English language proficiency, or we give you a certificate of English language proficiency if you meet the requirements that we're asking for, and we'll come on to that in a little bit. We ask for you to get the documents certified by an independent person, and to ensure that they can be machine read for when it's fed into our system. Provide any necessary translations. So if you have documents like your qualifications, or even things that are about English language, but the certificate is not in English, we ask you to provide a translation of that. And finally, to make a declaration that everything that you've said to us is true. Then you will apply, and we will charge you a registration fee. I think it's about £640 at the moment. And you go on and give us your details, your qualification, and your professional experience. We will go through that after you've made your application. We will also look at any professional registration or memberships that you have. So if you've been practicing in another country and you're a registrant at an equivalent regulator or registry body in that other country, we will check into that. We'll also take a look at any professional body memberships or anything like that. And of course, we have to take into account that this works a bit differently in different countries. So case by case basis, we're really looking for equivalence. We will look at your evidence of English language proficiency. And then finally, we'll ask you to declare and submit and pay your scrutiny fee that I just mentioned before. So once you have submitted your application, it takes us some time to assess and verify. We do have a bit of a queue at the moment, and we have a longer queue for some of our professions. So don't feel like, after a week we haven't got back to you, that means that it's not working out. It will be in a pile, and our registration team will be going through that pile and making progress on it. At the moment, I think that we are roughly about 2 months behind where we are. A lot of that is to do with the changes that we've made to English language, which caused a bit of a spike in applications. So we're dealing with that backlog at the moment and really catching up. We'll carry out a robust check for plagiarism. And so there are both manual and automated checks that we use to check applications for plagiarism. And we will go through each application to make sure that that is done. We'll check evidence of your English language proficiency. And there are several ways in which you can show that you're proficient enough in the English language to practice safely and effectively. And we'll come on to those in a moment. And we assess education, training and experience and how suitable that is, because sometimes people have nothing to say about that. And in that case, we might ask you to sit an additional test of competence. We'll go into the next slide. So these are the old requirements that we had for English language. And this system applies to any applications that were made before January the 29th of this year. And we count an application as having been made basically when you've paid the fee for the application and submitted it. So the way that it used to work, you could self-declare that English was your first language, and we would perhaps challenge you to provide evidence to support that. Some applications would go straight through, but a lot of the time we would then have to go back and challenge the person and say, well, how is it that you can evidence this? And it might be that they show that they've lived in a certain country for a certain amount of time, etc. We would have to then go away and check that, and we would have to essentially challenge the person, the applicant that was trying to get onto the register. If you're not able to self-declare that English was your first language, then we would ask you to sit an English language test. And we used to have 2 of these, which were IELTS and TOEFL. And you would have to achieve our required scores. And the scores, just to say, they're slightly higher for SLTs, speech and language therapists. There are historic reasons for that. And I think that part of it is to do with how inherent command of the English language is for people doing speech and language therapy. Moving on to the next. So we went through a pretty lengthy consultation process, which began in 2024, began in 23, ended in 24. And we had about 600 individuals come back to us answering that consultation, about 30 kind of professional bodies, lots of different stakeholder organisations fed into it. And broadly speaking, people were in favour of our proposals, but one of the proposals was knocked out for different reasons, because we had some logistical problems raised with it. So the first proposal that we made was to remove that self-declaration option that I was just talking about there. And that went on January the 29th. That is no longer in effect. The second thing that we proposed was to introduce a list of qualifying countries. And so this allows people to evidence their English language proficiency without sitting a test. And so if your primary qualification is gained in one of those countries, then you are able to say, I'm a proficient English speaker, okay? The test there, 75% English speaking, that's how we decided what went on the list. And the fourth proposal went ahead, which was to expand our list of English tests, one of which is OET. We have another one at the moment under consideration, but that's going to take some time to tick through the process. But we wanted to make sure, bearing in mind that we're closing off the route of self-declaration, etc., we wanted to make sure that people have as many routes as we feel is kind of safe and appropriate to get through and join our register. And just a quick note about that third proposal that we decided not to go ahead with. So that was to do with work experience, either registered in one of those listed countries that I mentioned, or supervised in the UK. So we felt that this would affect a really small number of applicants. In addition, it also brings into play all kinds of scenarios like having to get a reference from someone that you might not have a great relationship with. There are a range of technical problems, and so we decided not to go ahead with that proposal after our consultation. Move on to the next slide now. So this is what the new system looks like. The first thing we'll ask you is about your primary qualification. And as I mentioned, if the country of delivery is one of those qualifying countries, and this is all listed on our website, you'll be able to find that by going to hcpc.org.uk. But basically, if you take a look on there, you'll find a list of qualifying countries. And if your primary qualification is from there, then no English language test necessary, basically. If you have one, you can still submit evidence of that. But we don't make it compulsory for you to sit one. On the other hand, if the country of delivery of your qualification isn't on that list, and there are some big countries that we get registrants from that are not on the list, for example, India, Nigeria, Philippines, a few others, in that case, you will need to sit an English language test, and you're going to need to meet our required scores. And so this applies to all of the applications after January the 29th of this year. So about OET in particular, so we decided to recognise OET as part of our changes and add it to our current 2 providers that we had at the time. So we now have 3, and OET is now valid if your profession is appropriate to the ones on our register. And we'll show you a bit of a list of those afterwards. But we were really happy to approve OET, and I think that there are some advantages that helped us to make that decision. So I think having really robust checks against malpractice, and by that we mean things like cheating and fraud, that's really important to us because our baseline is public protection. We can't allow anyone onto our register if we think there might be any risk to the public to do so. The test is quite easy to access, and it compared well to our existing tests in terms of benchmarking. So that's also really helpful for us. And there are advantages as well for applicants. Some of our applicants may want to set a more general English test, but OET gives the advantage of being profession specific. So for us, we figured that that was really ideal for applicants who wanted the test to be based around what they're doing at work and what they're offering to the workplace, and therefore the reason they're joining our register. We accept tests that are computerized or paper, but they must be taken in a test centre. And this is not the same for all regulators, but certainly from our point of view, we want people to be able to show that they've taken their test in a test centre. And each of our recognised tests is benchmarked, so you won't find that OET is easier than the other tests, and you won't find that any of the other tests are easier than OET. We've set the level deliberately, so we're asking the same requirements in terms of difficulty for people coming through and using OET as we did for our existing recognised test providers. So these are the professions listed on the right here. It's a bit small, so I'll read them out. So chiropodists or podiatrists, that's one of the professions. Dietitians is one of them. Occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, physiotherapists, and radiographers. And these are all of the professions that we have on our register that have a direct proxy in terms of the OET test versions that are available. For all of those, we ask for a score of 1,400 with no elements below 300, except in the case of the speech and language therapists, where we ask for an overall score of 1,800 with no elements below 400. As I mentioned before, speech and language therapists, bit of an exception, slightly higher requirements. So there are minimum scores for each of those areas that you have to meet. But just to say, we don't allow the combining of test results. So if you've sat 2 separate tests, we don't allow you to combine elements of those. Some of the other regulators do, we don't. And yeah, it's essential, if you are not from one of those listed countries and you are using international registration, that you successfully pass one of our tests to the requirements that I've outlined there, or the other requirements for the other test providers that we currently recognise. We do get asked about kind of other tests randomly that we don't recognise. We used to do a comparison exercise for those before our changes, and we would work out if it was equivalent. As of now, at least the 29th of January, we only accept those 3 that are listed, of which OET is one. So if you have UK NAREC or something like that, and you want to come to us with a test, we won't accept that at this stage. We ask you to take one of the 3 that we recognise. So this is a little slot for any questions or comments that you have, really. And I think that Joanna's going to read some of them out. Ooh, hi, thank you for the overview. Do you have anything similar regarding GPHC or how much it applies to pharmacists? So pharmacists aren't on our register, and you would have to contact GPHC about that. I'm really sorry. We do have some professions that have prescribing rights, and information on that is available on our website. So if you have a pharmaceutical background, it may well be that you end up heading towards one of our professions anyway. But no, I'm afraid I can't answer for GPHC there. My apologies.
Thanks, Tom. I think that was the only other question for now, but I think we'll have a Q&A at the end as well. So yes, so I think we'll perfect. So I'll let you know if any other questions come through at the end.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, everybody. And I'll look out for further questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. That was so helpful and so informative. And I really hope that it's helped answer some of the questions that people might have had about the new process. But as mentioned, we will have time at the end for some questions as well. Wonderful. So for this next part of the session, I am delighted to be able to speak to you all about OET. So I'm going to share my slides. Wonderful. So as we know, for some of you, you might have been looking to apply with HCPC for a while, but OET will be a new option for you. So my session today, I'm delighted to be able to tell you a little bit more about OET and what we do. So my name's Nadia Falou and I'm Regional Manager for Europe and Africa at OET. In my session today, I'm going to tell you a bit more about us. I'll give you an overview of the test. I'm also going to talk to you in a little bit more detail about the scoring and results that Tom talked about as well, just to give you a bit more of an insight of what those scores actually mean and what you're expected to be able to produce linguistically to meet those scores. I'll tell you how you can book your test, and then very importantly, how you share those results with HCPC when you're ready to do so. And finally, to let you know how you can reach out to us if you need any further support. But I think it's really important to start with the importance of communication in healthcare. I'm very much aware that for people listening in today, English might not be your second language. It might not even be a third or a fourth language. And for me, myself, my background is in languages as well. And as you understand language, you understand how complex it can be. The way that you speak with your friends and family, that general English, it's very different to the language that you would need to use in business, so with doing presentations in business meetings with managers. It's different to the type of English that you use in an academic context at university. And it's very different to the skills that you need to use as a healthcare professional in your day-to-day work. And this is because healthcare professionals use what we call clinical communication skills. So some examples of clinical communication skills include understanding when to use certain language and terminology depending on who you're speaking to. So, for example, if you're a radiographer talking to another radiographer, you would be expected to use some of the more specific terminology and vocabulary that is relatable to your profession. However, if you were to use that language for me as your patient, I probably wouldn't understand a lot of the terms that you're using because they're so specialized. And this is a real key skill of healthcare professionals. It's being able to essentially grade but choose when you use certain language, speaking with professionals and speaking with patients. And in a way, you're translating that language for a patient to understand in what we call lay language. And on top of that, the way that you speak to your patient, you have to be able to show empathy. You have to be able to reassure them to help reduce that anxiety. Now, I know that I'm speaking to many healthcare professionals, and I'm really hoping that some of you are nodding your heads to go, yes, we do this all the time in our jobs. And you will, because it's so important for that relationship building with your healthcare professionals or peers, as well as the patients that you are looking after. And as you're probably aware, poor communication can have serious consequences. It can lead to the discontinuity of care. So if somebody doesn't understand another professional what's being asked of them, this can really break up the care. That can obviously lead to patient dissatisfaction. Patients can get very upset. They can get anxious. They can also get very frustrated if they don't understand what's happening to them, if they have lots of questions that they feel is not being answered. And of course, this can compromise patient safety. And unfortunately, there have been a number of cases here in the UK where a miscommunication has led to serious consequences. And this could be verbal, a speaking and listening misunderstanding, or even through written language. And finally, it leads to an inefficient use of valuable resources. And I think the important thing to remember is that language is two-way. So for you as well as a healthcare professional, you want to ensure that your colleagues are giving you clear information so that you don't have your time wasted, so that you can support your patients with the care that they need. So what is OET and how do we fit into everything? Well, OET is an English language test designed specifically for healthcare professionals. And I must stress, we are an English language test. We're not testing your external knowledge, your work experience, your training. We are assessing your English in a healthcare context, which hopefully as healthcare professionals, you'll find you'll be able to relate to very easily. We are part of the University of Cambridge, so our test is backed by research, and we work both with language experts as we put our test together, as well as subject matter experts. So these are experts in the field to make sure that what we put in our test is relevant for you as a healthcare professional. And really, every part of our test is designed to reflect the real-life communication skills that you will be expected to use in the workplace. And this can help better ensure patient safety and quality care. And something that I'm really proud to be able to share with you is that the skills that we look at, those communication skills that we look at in the OET test, are also in line with the communication skills that you need to demonstrate under the HCPC standards that Tom just spoke about. So when you register with HCPC, you will be expected to align with the standards that are set out on their website. And those that are linked to communication, you'll find there is actually a crossover with OET. You will also need to meet those standards for HCPC as you go through your renewal process. So as you prepare for OET and take the test, you're not just preparing for a test, you're preparing for the workplace, but then you're also building those skills that you need to demonstrate for your renewal for the standards. Now, we do cater for 12 different professions. So as Tom mentioned, we're delighted that the 6 we specifically cater for HCPC have all been recognised. So that would be for dietitians, radiotherapists, podiatrists, radiographers, speech and language therapists, you'd be looking at the speech pathology test, and occupational therapists. So now to tell you a bit more about what is in the test. So like many English language tests you'll see, there are the 4 skills. So we've got listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to talk to you in a little bit more detail about each of those subtests. But if I may, I'd just like to highlight 2 of the key ways in which OET is different. Like I said, my background is in languages. So like many of you on the call, you've probably done language tests in your careers or in your studies. When you look at general or academic English tests and language tests in general, usually in the writing tests, you're asked to write an essay on a general topic. And I don't know about you, but I used to get a little bit nervous about the topic that might turn up in the paper. There were some topics that I felt I had better vocabulary with. And sometimes even the night before my test, I would be trying to memorize word lists for a topic that I wasn't as familiar with. At OET, we don't ask you to do that. You are a healthcare professional, be a healthcare professional. In our writing test, you will be given a set of case notes specific for your profession, and you will be asked to write often a referral letter. And I'll talk to you a bit more detail about this in a moment. Another key difference you'll see is with our speaking test. Usually in a general or academic English test, you go to the speaking exam, you're sat down with the examiner. It's a bit like an interview. It can feel a bit like a job interview as well. And you might be asked to do a presentation as well. And this could be on a general topic, not related to your job. At OET, we don't ask you to do that. Again, as a healthcare professional, be yourself. Podiatrists, be a podiatrist. Speech and language therapists, be yourself. In our test, you will do 2 role plays where you take your professional role and you do the test with an interlocutor. And that person will take the role of a patient, a relative, or a carer. So now to give you a bit more of an overview about every part of the test. The first test is listening, and there are 3 parts to this test, and it takes about 40 minutes to complete. So in part A, you will listen to 2 consultations between a healthcare professional and a patient. And as you listen, you'll be expected to complete the notes, just like you would in the workplace. In part B, you'll listen to 6 short dialogues or monologues in workplace settings. So for example, it could be 2 healthcare professionals giving a handover or a healthcare professional talking to a patient. For every recording, you will have 1 multiple choice question to answer. And finally, when you get to part C, these are the longer extracts. So this is where it could be a presentation or an interview with healthcare professionals. This will be very much like what you're probably used to in your medical training when you've gone to medical conferences for that continuing professional development as well that Tom spoke about before as well. So for each of those recordings that you listen to, you will have multiple choice questions to answer. Next, we move over to the reading test, and you can see by the structure it's very similar to the listening. So you have part A, B, and C. However, there is a key difference in the reading test, and that is that part A is a separate paper to parts B and C. So part A is a short or a fast reading task. It takes 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes. And in this part of the test, you'll be given usually about 4 short texts, and you have to find information in those texts quickly. Now, people often say to us at OET, that's really fast. How are you supposed to do it, and why are you asking us to do it? Well, the truth is you're going to have to use these specific reading skills when you're in the workplace. You might be asked to work under pressure to find something in written information very quickly. And it's really important to find the information correctly from those texts. So you will find that it's actually a skill that you will be able to use a lot when you're in the workplace, but one as well that you do probably use already. A nice example I like to give of this is if you ever get any medication and you get the information leaflet that comes with it. If you need to find the information, for example, for the dosage, you wouldn't read the whole text. You would look very quickly through to find the key information you need. So it's very much an example of that kind of reading. After part A, you then move on to parts B and C. This part of the test takes 45 minutes. And like I say, it's a separate paper. So after the 15 minutes, part A is taken away. You then move on to parts B and C. And very similar to the listening test, in part B, you get those shorter extracts. It could be like something, for example, you would see on a notice board in a hospital. And for every extract, you get one multiple choice question. And then part C, you get those longer texts. So again, thinking about your medical training, thinking about your professional development, what you might read in a medical journal. And for each of those passages, you will have multiple choice questions to answer. Now we move over to the writing. So I've given you a bit of an overview of this already, but like I say, this will be specific to your profession. You will be given a set of case notes, and the test in total takes 45 minutes to complete. But at the start of the test, you are given 5 minutes to read the case notes. So that's really important for us to make sure that you do have the time to read those notes carefully whilst you're in the test room. So you have that 5 minutes allocated in the exam to give you that time to read the case notes carefully. You will then have 40 minutes to write your letter, and it's often a letter of referral. And finally, onto the speaking test. This takes about 20 minutes to complete. And as I said, you take the role of your professional self and you're asked to do 2 role plays. You do the role plays with an interlocutor. So the interlocutor is not grading you. They're not your examiner. They are just there to do the test with you. And they can take the role of a patient, a relative, or a carer. And one of the great things about our speaking test is in this part of the test, we're not just listening for your language skills, so your fluency, your grammar, your accuracy. We're also listening for those clinical communication skills that I mentioned earlier on. So did you show empathy? Did you pick on modern cue? How you ask information? And there's more information about this on our website. Your speaking test will be marked by 2 different assessors, and this ensures that the grade you're provided is fair. So on to scoring and results. One thing that is really important to point out at OET is we don't issue certificates, and I'm going to tell you about how we will share your results with you in a moment. But just as a reminder, it's really important that you book the right test for your profession. Now that might sound really obvious, and you might be saying to me, Nadia, why as a radiographer would I book a test for podiatry? It's really important though, just to make the point, please make sure that when you come to booking your exam, you do make sure you do the right test for your profession. Another thing is as well, please don't do another profession that is not recognised by HCPC as well. So if you've done a nursing test, for example, before, that will not be able to be shared with HCPC as they don't accept it. So as a reminder, there's a list on the screen for you. And in terms of the scores, as Tom already mentioned, there is a minimum score for each part of the test. So in your results, you'll get a score for reading, a score for listening, a score for writing, and a score for speaking. For speech and language therapists, you can have no score below 400. And overall, your minimum score needs to come to 1,800. For all the other professions, no score below 300 and an overall minimum score of 1,400. So what do those scores mean? Now, there's a lot of information on this screen, but I just want to take a couple of minutes to highlight some key information. When you get your results from OET, you will get a grade and a score. So the grades will range from A to E, and there is a C+ in there as well. And there is a score that ranges from 0 to 500. So when we're saying no score below 300, that means nothing below the grade C+. And for those of you familiar with IELTS, that's a 6.5 on IELTS. What does that actually mean in practice, though? It means that you're able to communicate well in a healthcare setting. There might still be some occasional errors and some hesitations, but you can follow the language and understand it. Now, something to point out, you have to meet that overall minimum score. So to get that 1,400, if you got 300 in each part of the test, you're not going to reach that overall minimum score. So as a recommendation, I would probably advise aim for a grade B, okay? Because overall your score is going to fall into this category. And that grade B would be more of an advanced level of English. And that means that you can communicate effectively with patients and other healthcare professionals using those examples like what I talked about earlier, but using the right register, the right vocabulary. There can still be a couple of mistakes, okay? There can still be some inaccuracies and hesitation, but overall you're an independent user of the language and you can use English in a wide range of clinical contexts. For speech and language therapists, you are aiming for that higher grade. So when we say that nothing below 400, you're falling into that advanced level of English as your starting point, but overall your score is going to fall into that higher proficient band of English. And what that means is that you can communicate very fluently and effectively with patients and healthcare professionals with very few errors, both in your written and spoken language. There is further information about our assessment criteria, and my colleagues on Friday will be talking to you in more detail about this. So we do have more ways to support if you want some more understanding of what those grades mean. But I hope that's given you a good understanding of what you're expected to produce to meet those scores. So when it comes to time to book your test, all of it is through our website. So you go to OET.com. There's also a link here directly to the booking page. You choose which version of the test you want to take. So that could be the paper or the computer-based test. I'm delighted to inform you that from May, you'll be able to take OET on computer up to 18 times a month. So there's much more options. There's a faster turnaround time for your results as well. So especially if you're looking at your timelines and deadlines for things that you're doing for your own recruitment journey. Choose your profession. Make sure you choose the right one, like I mentioned. Choose your test venue, the date, and then you complete the online application form. And as you complete the online application form, you will also set up your OET account. And this is really important. So as I mentioned, at OET, we do not issue certificates. Instead, when your result is available, it will be available through the online portal. And this is so important because this is how you share your result with HCPC. So our portal is fully compliant with GDPR and data protection. You have full control over who can see your result and when. So when your result's available online, you'll log in, you'll check your result, check that you've met that overall score as well, which can be simply done by adding up your scores, and then you can share it with the Health and Care Professions Council. And if you need any support from us here at OET, please do reach out. Sorry, I've jumped a bit. So you can reach out to us via OET.com on our Contact Us page. Our customer care team will be delighted to support you with any questions you have. Please note if there are questions specific to the registration process with HCPC, please contact HCPC directly. But if it's anything to do with your exam booking, please do reach out to us. And as you go on to OET.com, you'll also see Maya. There's a picture of Maya here on the screen. So you can ask Maya any questions as well. And please do follow us on social media so that you can get the most up-to-date information from us, be it about new information about the exams, or even about preparation opportunities. Which leads me to my next slide. As you're aware, this is a two-part webinar this week, and I'm delighted that on Friday you will be joined by two of my colleagues, Joanne Bass, who is Education Specialist for Europe, Middle East and Africa. Joanne has extensive experience teaching OET within the NHS, and Rebecca Bush, who is Teaching and Learning Manager here at OET, who knows everything about all the right resources to help you get the right preparation, to hopefully help you get the scores you require on your first attempt. So please do join us on Friday. Even if you use English a lot already, it's always important to do preparation before your test, even if it's a case of just practicing those skills and knowing what to expect on test day. And we wish you all of the best of luck with your recruitment journey to register with HCPC. And I'd just like to end with a quote here from a podiatrist who took OET, who said, "You want to communicate well with patients, and OET allows you to focus on the specific English you need for podiatry. It was also great that I could use OET for my job." And we hope you'll all find the same. So thank you so much. I'll stop sharing my slides here and happy to answer any questions that have come up.
Hi, Nadia, and hi, Tom. Thank you so much for such a brilliant session. I'll show some questions on the screen. So we'll start with one from Melissa. So Melissa says, how would we check that particular degree courses are the equivalent of the UK standard?
Yeah, I think that's one for me. The best thing to do there is to contact our international registration team, and you can find details for them on our website. But if you email through to international@hcpc.uk, then they should be able to come back to you about that.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom. Another question from Jimmy. He says, so we can take the online OET and register with HCPC?
Yeah, so this is a difficult one because it depends where you're taking that test. So if you're taking it from a test centre and you're taking a computerised test, an online version, yes, that's absolutely fine. If you're taking it from home, then the answer is no. So we ask you to get to a test centre, and I'm really sorry about that, but we need to be confident that everything fits within our own verification policies as well as OETs.
Thank you. And we have another question as well from Andisi, who says, can we get a recording of this session or a written summary?
Yes, so this will be on YouTube as well, so you'll be able to watch it back if you need to. That's no problem at all.
Perfect. And another one here. So Jack says, if I get the overall score of 1,400 and I scored 330 in the reading subtest, does it mean I've passed?
So unless you're a speech and language therapist, yes, basically. So we ask for you to have no element below 300. So if you got 330 in one element, that's absolutely fine. So you can fall a little bit short on reading or writing or speaking and listening, and balance that out with scores from the other areas, but only if it's above 300, unless you're a speech and language therapist, in which case it's 400.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we have another question from Chulwe saying, hello, personally, I've been trying to register, but I keep getting an error with my password.
Chulwe, I'm not sure whether you're trying to register for OET or whether you're trying to join the HCPC register there. I don't know. Nadia, do you want to come at it from OET's point of view, and I can say what to do if it's HCPC?
Of course. So if it is an issue with OET, please do reach out to our customer care team and we'll be able to help you reset that.
Yeah, and for HCPC, same answer that I gave before. The best thing to do is to contact our international registrations team directly. As I said, you can find contact details for them on our website. If you just search HCPC International Registrations, you'll find that there's an email address kind of floating around some of those web pages. But the email address is international@hcpc. So take a look for that.
Thanks so much. We have another one here from Jimmy again saying, can dietitians take the test for HCPC?
Yes, Jimmy, do it.
That's a yes. So thanks very much, Jimmy, and wishing you the best if you're taking the test for dietitians. So we have a few questions here about nursing. So the session is just for allied health professionals. So we're just going to answer those questions today. Another question as well from Mandy about preparation resources. So again, our session on Friday, that will be covering OET preparation. I have a question here from Anna Shaklab. So I am a physiotherapist having a master's degree. Shall we write the course description for both the master's degree and bachelor's degree, or just bachelor's degree? I'm not too sure perhaps if the question could be rephrased, but perhaps we could just touch on physiotherapy and how that relates to the HCPC.
Yeah, so I think that what we ask you for is your most recent qualification, but I'm not the right person to answer this really. So again, I think that the best thing to do is to contact our international registrations team. I will put contact details for that into the chat shortly because there have been a few people asking for them. Also, I just wanted to say about the questions about nursing. So this falls under the Nursing and Midwifery Council, NMC, rather than HCPC, but they have a really detailed web page outlining all of their English language requirements. So that should be helpful to you, and I'd definitely advise taking a look at the NMC webpage if you're interested in qualifying for nursing.
Perfect, thank you very much. Do we have time for any more questions?
Yeah.
We've got one more here from Chulway. How many correct answers should one get from each test out of the 42 questions to obtain the 350?
It's a very good question, and I would recommend going to the session on Friday for further information on that in terms of looking at that score for you. And there is also some guidance on our website as well that we can direct you to as well.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chulway. Looking forward to seeing you on Friday in the preparation session. Does anyone have any other questions for Tom and Nadia? Please post them in the chat now, and we will take those.
I just wanted to quickly mention that point about the email address in case you need to contact our registration team for more information. So it's international@hcpc-uk.org is the correct address. And I think we're going to be able to post that into the main chat. Someone is going to do that for us now.
That's in the chat box now. Thanks so much, Tom.
Lovely, thank you.
Perfect. And if just on the topic of the password as well, I've just put a link in the chat to our contact us page as well. So any issues that you're having with registering for OET, that's where you can reach out to the team. Okay, it looks like those are all of our questions. So thank you so much. I'll hand back over to you now to close the session. But thank you everyone for those questions, and looking forward to seeing you on Friday.
And I would like to say exactly the same, and a huge thank you to Tom for kindly joining us today at E to share those updates. I think it's always really important for our candidates to know what the process is to help them go through the stages in the right way. So I really hope that everybody who's been able to join us today has found that useful. And for those of you looking to register with HCPC, all the best of luck. And thank you again for joining us today. Brilliant. Bye-bye.